Hello, and welcome to the next lecture in the Foundations of Music. In this lecture, we will be continuing with pitches. We've spent the last couple lectures on rhythms, and we will be revisiting the vertical element of the staff with some additional concepts. Some of them being the keyboard, accidentals, and enharmonics. Pictured in this first slide, I have some of the basic concepts involving pitch that you should be familiar with before moving on. If any of these concepts presented on this slide are unfamiliar to you, I recommend going back and reviewing our lecture on pitch in the first part, containing the staff, both clefs, the note heads, ledger lines, and the grand staff. It will be essential in moving forward. The first concept we will talk about is the keyboard. This is less of a concept and more of an actual physical item that you have probably seen. We refer to this as a keyboard and not a piano because the piano is, relatively speaking, a new invention, and instruments have used keyboards prior to the invention of the piano. Some of the instruments are pictured below. The harpsichord, the clavichord, and the church organ. Again, all of these instruments use the keyboard and predate the piano. So moving forward, I will refer to this as the keyboard and not just the piano. The keyboard is one of the most important tools in our toolkit for exploring the visual representation of many musical concepts. It's very good and important to have a tactile sense of what we are talking about. So if you can sit at a piano and touch the keys and produce your own sounds as opposed to just reading about them online, it will connect the dots much quicker for you. Now, however, we will discuss the piano keyboard. On a grand piano, you will typically find 88 keys, 52 white keys, and 36 black keys. As mentioned in a previous lecture on the ranges of pitches, they are identified based on how they lay on the piano. Remember that the C in the middle of the grand staff is what we called C4. And pictured just below here on the bottom left is a grand staff. The line in between the two clefs, that's C4. This is also referred to as middle C. This is for two reasons. We call it C4 because it is the fourth C on the piano. And you can see here, there are arrows pointing to each C. And going from left to right, the C in the middle is fourth C. We also call it middle C because of how it lays on the grand staff, but also because that it is in the middle of the piano keyboard. As explained in a previous lecture, only the first 7 letters of the alphabet are used to name the pitches. These 7 letters are used as the names of the white keys on the keyboard, beginning on the left with A and successively repeating this sequence A through G up to the other end of the keyboard. There are 2 important landmarks on the keyboard that will help you know which key belongs to which letter of the alphabet. First is that the note C always occurs immediately to the left of a group of 2 black keys. The second landmark is that the note F always occurs immediately to the left of a group of 3 black keys. The black keys repeat in a sequence of 3s and then 2, and you can use this to know where the alphabet repeats itself, as well as identify the names of the keys on the keyboard. As we move along the keyboard, and you travel from key to key, we use metrics that we call half steps and whole steps. Speaking in terms of half steps and whole steps will help in our understanding in a future lecture involving intervals and scales. Simply put, the distance from one key to the next is one half step. So using math, that would make 2 half steps one whole step. If we apply this to the keyboard pictured in this slide, the distance from E to F is one half step. The distance from F to G is one whole step. If you start on F, you go one half step to the black key in between F and G, and then another half step from that black key to G. Gives you one whole step. We will now discuss the black keys. The black keys of the keyboard are named in relation to the white keys that they stand between. Each black key can be identified by 2 different names, which we will discuss shortly. These names are collectively referred to as accidentals. In written music, we use signs called accidentals that are used to alter the pitch of a note. Pictured on the bottom of this slide, I have the 3 most common accidentals. There are a couple more, but these are the most important ones for you to know at this moment. Starting on the left, we have a flat symbol. This looks like a lowercase letter b. The flat symbol indicates that a pitch should be lowered by one half step. I like to think of this as if you flatten a tire, or if you have a flat balloon. Generally, flattened things go down. The sharp symbol, which looks like the pound sign on a telephone or a hashtag as used in social media, is a symbol that indicates that a pitch should be raised by one half step. I like to think of this as a cartoon character sitting down on something sharp, like a thumbtack, and they immediately shoot up. The sharp sign increases the pitch upward by one half step. The natural symbol indicates that a pitch should be left unaltered. This would be like keeping it as a white key. It does not get lowered and it does not get raised. I don't know exactly what you would call this symbol or how to relate it to something in real life. It's almost like an upside down 7 with a right side up 7, or a square with a line sticking out of the top left and a line sticking out of the bottom right. If you can come up with anything better to help remember this symbol, I advise it. Here I have an example of how these accidentals work in relation to the black keys. On the left, pictured on the staff, you have the pitch G. On the keyboard, it is that white key with the G on it. This is unaltered, and it's simply the pitch G. We also might call this G natural. That is the natural state of the pitch. In the middle, we have lowered that G. We've put in a flat symbol before it on the staff, and so to play it on the keyboard, you would go down one half step to that black key to the left of the G. That is G flat. On the right, we have a G sharp. To raise the pitch by one half step, you would need to sharp the G. On the staff, you have the sharp sign before the note head, and on the keyboard, the G has gone up one half step to the black key on its right. That is G sharp. Notice that the symbols are placed before the note head when they are on the staff, but if you write out the pitch, or if you speak about the pitch, this accidental comes after it. So in the middle, you can see the flat sign comes before the note head for G. But when discussing it, I refer to that as G flat, or G sharp, or G natural. And it's the same when you write it. Now we will discuss enharmonics. As you may recall from a couple slides ago, I referred to the black keys as having multiple names. The term that we use for two notes that have the same sounding pitch is an enharmonic. From the previous slide, we saw that if you sharp G, it will go up 1/2 step, or to the black key on its right. But what happens when you flat the pitch A? You get A flat, and that takes it down to the black key on the left of A. This is the same key on the piano. G sharp and A flat are the same pitch. But they have two different names. This is a good example of enharmonic. On the right, I have a unique example that this does not apply just for black keys. You can flatten or sharpen any pitch. It doesn't have to have a black key next to it. Here, the first pitch on that staff is E. And the pitch on the staff to its right is F flat. But there's no black key in between E and F. So if you put a flat sign on F, you have to go down 1/2 step. That makes F flat the same pitch as E. These are enharmonic pitches. You should experiment with this. If you have your own piano or electric keyboard, try exploring the different enharmonics you can create using accidentals. Pick any key on the keyboard, press it, and see how many names you can use to identify it. Is it a B flat? Is it an A sharp? What is the difference between a C flat and a B natural? You should play with this on a keyboard. If you do not own your own keyboard, you can visit the music department of your local college, and they will likely have practice rooms with pianos in them. These are usually open to the public. Lastly, you can download a piano app. There are many apps available for free that will turn your smart device into a touchscreen piano. Play around with this. These concepts will make more sense if you can hear the pitches and not just read about them. Special note is that the piano app that I use is simply called Piano, and it is in the iPhone's App Store. Our last slide is a special note on some of the rules regarding accidentals. There are always small little details in music, little rules that we have to follow, but it's hard to cover them all until you happen upon them yourself. But I've written down some of the rules regarding accidentals. The first one is that an accidental placed on a note will apply to all of the notes of the same name in that measure. So our first staff on the top right, there is a B flat. You can see a B with a flat sign on it. On beat 4 of that measure, there is another B. Because there was a B flat in the first part of the measure, this other B is also a B flat. Our second rule, the bar line resets all accidentals. Here I have the same example as the first staff, but it continues into a second measure. So again, that first measure has two B flats, but then there is a bar line. So in the second measure, both of those B's are B naturals. The bar line wipes clean any of the accidentals that you used in the previous measure. The third one is how we use the natural symbol. To change a note back to its original state, you will use a natural sign. Here you can see on beat 2 is a B flat. There is a B with a flat sign on it. On beat 4, I've placed a natural sign on it. This means it is a B natural, or the B flat would be the black key and the B natural would be the white key. So whereas the very first example, the second B didn't have another symbol on it, that made it a B flat. But on this third staff, the second B has a natural sign on it, so that tells you to ignore the previous B flat. You will only use natural signs if you are trying to override a previous accidental in a measure. You would not use a natural sign if there was no other indication that a note should be anything other than natural. The natural sign also uses the rule that following notes of the same name will have the same application. So here we have a continuation where two measures are placed. In the first measure, you have a B flat, and then a B natural on beat 4. And on the second measure, you have a G flat, and then a G natural. And then on the last beat of that measure, you have a G with no accidental symbol on it. Because the last G in that measure was a G natural with a natural accidental, that last G is also a G natural. This can seem very convoluted. There's a lot of words and talking about it, and there's a lot of red markings on this slide, but it's really quite simple, and you get used to it very quickly if you are a practicing musician. And that concludes our lecture on pitches, Part 2.